The Prepare podcast is a product of the Maryland Center for School Safety and is intended to educate school safety partners in Maryland and beyond. Information shared will discuss current solutions, best practices, and lessons learned through interviews with individuals whose lives have been impacted by school violence, subject matter safety experts, and organizations providing strategies, resources, and support in the school safety space. We invite listeners to share the information with others, thus expanding the school safety community to include everyone in actions that keep Maryland students and schools safe. This topic series will provide information related to behavior threat assessment. Episodes in this series will include information about what the behavior threat assessment process is, research supporting implementation in schools, and why it is an important part of keeping schools safe. Series episodes will feature national and local experts sharing their knowledge and experiences. We hope you find this topic series helpful in understanding behavior threat assessment. In this first episode of the Behavior Threat Assessment topic series, we talk with a father whose son was killed in the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School tragedy. He shares the many lessons learned and actions being taken. We want to warn our listeners in advance that the episode may be difficult for some. Thank you, Max Schachter, for joining us today to share your knowledge and expertise related to school safety. If you could maybe just start by introducing yourself and kind of your organization and the work you're doing just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Kim. My name is Max Schachter, and my little boy Alex was murdered in the Parkland school shooting. And after that horrible day, I put my former life on hold, and so now I'm a national school safety advocate. And I travel the country and I present on Parkland on the failures from that day, the missed warning signs, and the failed law enforcement response, and then what Florida's done post Parkland. Florida leads the nation in school safety, and we're doing a lot of things that others aren't at this point. But I think that after Parkland, we've seen an increase in school safety like never before. So that has been the legacy of the Parkland 17. So I'm really happy to be at the Maryland School Safety Conference, and it's nice to see you.
Yeah, no, and we appreciate you coming to share the message. So what we want to be able to do is also allow you to that message for it to go beyond the four walls here at Turf Valley today. So thinking about the information you shared this morning with the audience, what are some kind of really key important moments that you would like others who maybe weren't here today to be able to hear also?
Well, my mission in life right now is number one, to keep my little boy's memory alive, Alex. And then number two, to replicate what Florida's done post Parkland, around to other states and other school districts. And so I think that one of the best things that Florida's done is that we now have a school safety director in every school district, and that's really, I think, been groundbreaking to have an individual that his sole job. It's a big job, and it's hard, when you're you're in charge of transportation and other things and school safety. So now we have dedicated people that are just responsible for school safety. We also have dedicated mental health coordinators in every district now, and we now have a see something, say something tip line. We did not have that prior to Parkland. There's so many things that Florida's done, and Florida's unique in that we've passed a school safety bill every year since Parkland. So, some states have, as I travel around, they're like, oh, we did that after Parkland, or it's wonderful when I hear, oh, well, this was started after Parkland, or that was started after Parkland. But Florida has kept our foot on the accelerator because you're never done with school safety in reality, and you should be constantly innovating and evaluating what you did before, and to make sure that it's done with efficacy and making changes and improvements. And that's what Florida has continued to try to do.
Yeah, no, and you're right. That's what I kind of heard this morning as well, right? That it's been a series of legislative bills and things that have happened. And I love that you say that it's not just a reactionary in the moment, right? But has to continue to carry on from
Yeah,
here.
and it's an evolution. Rome wasn't built in a day, and even if you're in a state that's only done, several of the improvements, it's really that constant continuation to try to do everything you can to make schools safer. I think that one thing that's really helped Florida is the continuity of leadership. We've had, leaders in our state that have been in the same position for a long time. And so that institutional knowledge hasn't dissipated, and because it takes people time to get up and running where we haven't had that. So, and also what's unique is that the families, never before have you had a horrible tragedy, and then the families are really involved in every part of the advocacy. And we have a very close relationship with the Florida Department of Education. They would, like, at every school safety conference, we're there, we're presenting, we're part of that, because we helped create everything that is now part of safe schools in Florida, and it's their legacy, and I appreciate, them all never forgetting our loved ones.
Mhm. No, and that is, I think, one of the things I was going to ask was how you keep people engaged in the topic, right? Beyond, 1 year out, 2 year out.
And totally, and there's so much
Yeah.
turnover in schools, and so that's one way that they do that is they're constantly bringing us in. We're constantly presenting. We're on panels at our school safety conferences, and a lot of us have started charities and, do public speaking. And we're not only in Tallahassee, but we're in Washington D.C. and we started a school safety policy center to try to help other states, help other school districts advance common sense school safety policies and procedures as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because it is common sense, right? Some of what you've shared, and maybe even for you to share with the listening audience, then some of those key elements that became part of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission. So as
Mhm.
you guys have continued to do the work, those lessons learned, what all schools should be doing,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be, if we have enough money or if we
Right.
have enough time, that
Yeah.
we need to commit to doing these simple things.
I also, forgot to mention probably one of the singular most impactful thing we did to pass the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act was we brought the leaders of the legislature through the site of the Parkland school shooting, and that, once you walk through that building, you'll never forget, and you will be changed forever, because the site of the Parkland school shooting, it was frozen in time for 5.5 years. And so nothing was removed from the building, and it wasn't cleaned. And so there's blood everywhere. And this was the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history, where 17 were murdered and 17 were injured in just 3 minutes and 51 seconds. So I think that definitely, we would not have passed the bill if we didn't have, leaders in our state that cared about this issue. So that was hugely important. But in answer to your question, so we've passed an access control law. So now every teacher has to teach behind a locked door. We had that problem during Parkland. You've had, because the Parkland murderer walked through an unlocked, unstaffed gate. We saw in Uvalde, the murderer in Texas got into this school through a door that was, I think, propped open, and then walked into a classroom that was unlocked, and murdered all of those children. And so that's one thing. We put access control policies in place. We have fences around all of our schools, and people care about this issue. I think, most importantly, at a high level, they prioritize school safety. They understand that if your students and your staff don't make it home every day, nothing else matters. We have school safety directors in every school district. We have mental health coordinators in every district. We're requiring that every district has we don't say reunification, because I and the other 17 families were not reunified, but there is a unification process in every school district. We have in Florida an armed officer in every K through 12 school throughout the state. We have armed guardians in every school, so that as force multipliers, so that has been huge. They're wonderful role models for our children, and there's just so much more. Every year, we're trying to make things better.
So can you share the armed guardian? So what is a guardian in Florida? Can you explain what that means or what that is?
Sure. So the law is that every school has to be staffed with at least one armed school safety officer. And so to qualify for that law or to comply with the law, you could have an armed police officer, a sheriff's deputy. You could have, and you could take an existing school personnel, send them through a sheriff-sponsored 144-hour training, and then there are other states that are doing 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. We're doing 144 hours, and it's a very intense program, our Guardian program. It's uniform throughout the state. Every sheriff is doing a minimum of 144 hours. Some are doing even more than that, and now they passed a law that if you are an armed guardian in one district, you can move to another district and your license will transfer. So there's a high weed out ratio with that program. They're doing shoot, don't shoot, weapons retention, and it's very intense. They're doing a psych eval, polygraph, background checks, and they're not taking everyone. Obviously, this is a volunteer program, but there are people in your district that might have a special skill set. And so maybe former military, former law enforcement, and those people that want to make a difference, and that currently work in your district, maybe they're not teachers, but maybe they're a coach, a monitor, a school safety monitor, a principal, an assistant principal. Those individuals can go through the sheriff office guardian program and be guardians. And so you could take an existing personnel and send them to the program and they would carry concealed, or you could hire new personnel and send them through the guardian program, and then they would open carry. But that is another option for districts that can't afford a law enforcement, an SRO or school resource deputy.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing kind of that is an interesting program.
And just
144 is very robust.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And just to kind of expound on that, explain why we did that, it's because what we learned in investigating the Parkland school shooting is that the Parkland murderer had an empty gun 5 times. 5 times, if somebody, there were 5 different opportunities. If somebody had been armed other than the school resource deputy, who was a coward and never went into the building and went and hid between concrete pillars 7 and 8, then one of those individuals could have taken out the Parkland murderer and saved lives. So that's why we did it.
Appreciate that. Can you talk a little bit about threat assessment? So in Maryland, we do have school-based and district-based behavior threat assessment teams, but what was some of the work related to threat assessment and threat management that Florida's been doing to, again, prevent, right, to get ahead of all of this from happening?
Yeah, and initially in my kind of school safety education evolution, initially, obviously, I focused on physical security because, Alex was killed in his classroom and he was shot through the classroom door window. The Parkland murder didn't go into Alex's class. He shot through the window in Alex's door. But over the last couple of years, I have migrated and evolved in my thinking that it would be nice if we could prevent these from happening even in the first place, because by the time the gun comes on campus, it's kind of too late. And so threat management is really the best tool we've had to prevent acts of targeted violence. And so in Florida, we developed a model termed the Florida model. And so our model is unique in that we don't have any confusing terminology. So we got rid of the confusing terminology, and it's just unfounded and low, medium, high. So we've simplified the terms. Number 2, we have timelines that everything needs to be done, because what we found is that in in Florida, we found some school districts that were taking a long time to work through these threat assessments. Sometimes they're taking weeks and a month, and that's just too long. It needs to happen a lot sooner. So that's why we started to put these timelines into place. So if there's a threat that comes in, that school-based team has to decide within 48 hours what the level of concern is. And then what we also found in Parkland was that the principal of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas was disengaged and uninvolved in the threat assessment process. So before, in the past, we were just training the school safety team. But now that's really not good enough. You need to have buy-in and acceptance and with the leadership. If your principal is not involved and is not interested and doesn't prioritize this, that's what happened in Parkland. You're going to have another one like Parkland. So that's why we're training our principals. We're training our superintendents, and the principals are involved. So before, we only had the school-based team. Now we have the district-based team as well, but now it's a multi-layered approval process and tiered system. So now not all of the pressure is on just the chair of the school-based team, and they're really scared to make the decisions. Now the school-based team makes a decision. It goes to the principal, who's also trained, and the principal either concurs with the level of concern. If the principal concurs, then he or she sends it to the district-based team, which has even more training to evaluate it and make sure. If the principal doesn't agree, then he or she sends it back to the school-based team to reevaluate it. So those are the major differences with the Florida model, and also really proud that Florida will be the first state in the country to have a portal. So every threat assessment done in K through 12 will be uploaded to this portal, because one of the major problems in the United States is information sharing. And in the conference today, somebody asked this great question about she was with not a public school, but a community school, or I can't remember if she was she's with an independent school district, independent school. She's the head of the school, and she said that she had this kid that was on the pathway. He checked all the boxes, and basically maybe he left or they expelled the kid, and then he went to a public school. And she has no idea what school he went to. She never sent any of the materials to this new school, and so the school has no idea. So in Florida, we're really trying to avoid those situations by having this portal where we can just push of a button, send information, and schools need information. Information sharing is a big problem, and the lack thereof.
Yeah, so to that point then, I know another large amount of your time has been to kind of make data transparent, look at information that is really publicly available across the country in different states related to sort of, I think you use safety incidents, right? For parents and other community members to kind of know what's happening within their school. So can you just talk a little bit about like how you got to that space? I'm sure there was some sort of aha moment where you were like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Totally.
I should have.
Yeah, you're right. I sit on the Parkland Shooting Commission that was established by the governor after the tragedy. It's called the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Commission. And while on that commission, I found out that every school reported incidents of violence and drugs to the state. Now, as Alex's father, I never got the call from the principal saying, "Great news, parents, our bullying numbers dropped by 15% this month," or "Parents, our numbers of weapons coming into Broward County School District have jumped by 15% this semester. I really need you to search their backpacks, have a conversation with your kids." I never got that call. The reason I never got that call, because that call doesn't exist. That call's never made by administrators to parents, and basically parents have no idea what's happening inside their schools. They dropped their kids off. I dropped Alex off. I had no idea that he was going to school with such a violent individual. And when I went to go look at this data that I found out about, it was just a massive Excel spreadsheet, which was really impossible for me to understand. It was buried in the Department of Education website, and I could not, decipher it. It made it impossible to compare schools And so I said, why don't I create this dashboard? So that's what we did. And we got accepted to be a Department of Justice Stop School Violence grantee. And so it took us 3 years to build out this Florida dashboard that's really robust with over 100 different metrics. And then it's always been my dream to do it nationwide. And so we just launched our nationwide school safety dashboard. And so today I went over and I went over slides about the Maryland school safety dashboard and the data that every school is reporting to in Maryland and making it available. I wanted to tell all of the school administrators because parents are going to be looking at this data, and so they need to be aware that the dashboard is available. And I would like for them to use the data. Now, every school has their own data, and every district knows what their data is, but they probably have never. They don't know what the neighboring school is reporting. They don't know what the neighboring district is reporting or not reporting. And so I don't care if schools report high numbers. I just want the data to be accurate and uniform. We can't manage what we don't measure, and parents have a right to know what's happening in their schools.
So when you think about maybe the next step related to that data, like how would you envision states using the information that becomes sort of in a very easy way to to look at that and see what it says? What might be some sort of next steps in
Well,
terms of data
a
use?
couple of things. Number one, we have to make sure that the numbers are accurate, and I don't mean that you could also have over-reporting just by mistake. In Florida, if there's 10 kids in a fight, it's recorded as one fight. But we had some schools early on reporting 10 fights, and so their numbers were way out of whack, and they were very, very high. So I think that number one, there needs to be uniformity. We have to be training our schools on reporting to make sure that they're more accurate and uniform. One of the ways that I think that we can use data is, number one, the school board members should be using this. And if you're seeing trends, they should be making adjustments. At the state level in Florida, we have an accountability team, and we have data scientists that's all they're looking at is this data to making sure that it's right. The Department of Education and the White House has put out, an executive order and briefings on this data piece that parents have a right with school choice. They should know what's happening. And then, my ultimate goal is we don't want to penalize schools for reporting high numbers. I want to do the reverse. If schools are reporting high numbers, that should identify an issue. If you're looking at our dashboard, now you can identify the schools that are reporting the highest numbers of violence in the state. We should be surging resources into those schools. And so I think there's so many different takeaways from this. We can identify leaders, principals, superintendents are doing a good job. Based on their data, you can look at trends over time. And then ultimately, it's just one piece. Just looking at our dashboard, you cannot tell if your school is safe or not because even if you're reporting high numbers, that doesn't mean that things are bad. You could have your school reporting the highest numbers of vaping incidents in the state, and maybe that's the case because you have a principal that's really focused on this issue, really wants to get it under control, and they just installed halo vaping sensors. You could have a school that's reporting really high weapon numbers, and maybe it's because they just installed metal detection. So there's so many different ways that we can use this. I'm working with a school district in Florida right now to understand all of the school safety protocols that they've implemented and to see what the outcome is in the data piece. So in the data, it's really the outcome, how many guns come on campus, but we don't know on the front end what schools are doing to minimize or, all those school safety measures that they've implemented. I would love, and hopefully we can expand that to, include everything that the schools are doing, and then what is the outcome? What is working? What isn't working?
Yep.
And I think that's really where the rubber meets the road.
Yep. makes sense, right? People learning the exemplary practices from
Yes.
others through that. Another thing, so, and I won't keep you much longer, but lockdown drills. So I was surprised as you were kind of sharing that that hadn't been a practice previously.
Yeah.
So talk about maybe the importance of lockdown drills.
So what Kim is referencing is that during the shooting, and I play this video when I in my presentation. It's the teacher that taught the Holocaust class. Her name is Ivy Seamus, and in the video she's talking about the fact that she never had any active shooter training, and during the shooting she didn't know what to do, so she had to take the advice of one of her students, and the students telling her, "Oh, well, my mom would do this." So it's just really crazy how it's just the repercussions of the lack of training. If you fail to train, you're trained to fail. And by giving kids this training, you're really empowering them and building confidence. Because if we're not training the kids, like they live in this world, they watch movies, they know what's going on. Like kids are thinking about this all the time as they're walking through the hallway. What do I do if a school shooter shows up in the hallway? So we really need to give them the tools. And unfortunately, this is the life we live in. This is the America we live in, where there's mass shootings all the time. And so these are life lessons, unfortunately, the kids need to know what to do.
Yeah. So it's now Florida law that they
Yes.
must do lockdown drills. And you
Yes.
guys, I think you even said they define within the first 10 days or within the first 2 weeks of school,
Yes.
they have to do.
Yeah, and they have to do, 6 a year in high school and 4 in elementary school. But we also want to understand that we're training our next school mass murderer. Most likely they're in our schools now. So we don't just hiding in a corner and praying is not a good strategy. So hopefully school districts are using option-based, scenario-based to educate the kids so that they can make the best decisions possible. And kids should not be on their phones. We have a cell phone ban in Florida. I know you didn't ask this question, but that's really important as well. I know, parents are like, "Oh, I want to be able to contact my kid," but that's not the safe thing to do. We don't want the kids on the phones. We want the kids, doing the things that are going to make sure that they're in a safe and secure environment. And yeah.
I appreciate anything else Alex, I'm sure would be very proud of you for everything you've been doing. And going beyond just Florida and taking all of these practices to everybody is
That's what we
commendable.
want. Yeah.
Any last comments before we close out? Last word?
No, I thank you for having me and for allowing me to keep Alex's memory alive. And I want to invite everybody to come to the Florida Summit next year.
All right.
So I hope Maryland will join us.
Yes.
So we can work together, because it takes a village, and so much. We've seen so much improvement since Parkland, but there's still more way to go, more things to do.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
We hope you found this first episode in the Behavior Threat Assessment topic series informative. We understand that hearing the stories of those impacted by school violence can be difficult, but feel they are important to learn the lessons that prevent the same mistakes from occurring in the future. The next episode in this topic series will provide details about the behavior threat assessment process. We hope you continue to listen, learn, and reflect.
Safety isn't the job of one person. It's something we build together. We all see different parts of what's happening around us at school, our neighborhoods, and online. And sometimes we're the first ones to spot a concern. Your voice can make a difference. If you see something, say something. Make a report through Safe Schools Maryland. It's always anonymous, always available at 1-833-MD-BE-SAFE or visit safeschoolsmaryland.org.